This is Trump's meme coin, down almost 90%. And this is Argentina President Javier Milei's meme coin, down 90%. And this is Mantra, down 90% after evaporating $5 billion in an absolutely wild collapse. But it's not a meme coin. It was one of the top 50 crypto projects just weeks ago. So how did it implode? What does it say about the rest of crypto? And why did the project's founder tell us he wouldn't have done anything differently? In terms of those holders and yourself leading the charge, what that decision process looked like and whether or not you would go back and change it.
No, I wouldn't.
Today, we're digging into Mantra's $5 billion collapse. So let's just start with the facts. Mantra was, and I guess still is, its own blockchain, focused on tokenizing real-world assets like real estate that had promised to bring the world's financial ecosystem on-chain. It was founded by this guy, JP Mullin, an American crypto founder who had floated around Spain, China, and now Dubai, building Mantra over the last 4 years. JP and the Mantra team had announced partnerships all throughout 2024, including with some pretty big names like Tokenomics, one of the UAE's largest real estate developers, and a sustainability initiative with a platform there to tokenize the financing of electric motorcycles in Dubai. All this hype seemingly put Mantra on the map and fueled the rise of its Ohm token through 2024, as it rose from about 5 cents to almost $4 by year's end. In fact, it wouldn't be a stretch to say Mantra was cranking on all cylinders. So much so that by the time 2025 came around, Mantra was hosting an event with Cointelegraph in France at the quote luxurious 5-star Shangri-La Paris hotel. So why then, during that very same weekend, was one of crypto's analysts tweeting at JP Mullin, asking him when the crash was coming?
The fundamentals always come into play eventually, and it was about time.
That's Hedgeye crypto analyst Ish Assad, and his call here might go down as one of the most prescient of all time, because literally just 3 days after JP laughed at his prediction that Ohm was due for a collapse, saying, "Nice research," the token fell 80% in a day.
It feels good to be right and to, however small it was, have made some level of difference out there. I was trying to alert people. Of course, the community fiercely suppressed me, including the founder himself. I was definitely caught off guard by the ha-has in front of all of his responses and kind of just the sheer arrogance, dismissing my claims, not claims, just pointing out pure facts.
So what did Ish see that other people were missing? And that, unfortunately, is where we get into some shenanigans that really aren't solely limited to Mantra, because it's something a lot of crypto projects do. It just so happens that Mantra also did something else that ultimately sealed their fate. So let's start with what every crypto project does, even meme coins, which is figure out their tokenomics. Not only how many tokens should exist, but how many go to who and at what rate should they be unlocked or able to be sold on the open market. For example, even Trump's meme coin launched with very clear rules around millions of tokens getting unlocked every month. When Mantra launched their own blockchain, they had that too, with one key difference. While tokens on their new blockchain were technically locked up, anyone could convert older versions of a token they launched on Ethereum back in 2020 whenever they wanted. In fact, a Medium post at the time of their blockchain's launch in October 2024 noted that one of the core features of their new blockchain would be allowing people to bridge Ohm tokens from ERC20 to Mantra mainnet coins. And unsurprisingly, many people did just that when Mantra's blockchain went live in October, which kind of rendered almost any token lockups on new tokens useless, considering there were already hundreds of millions of tokens floating around.
I think, as you said, it really negates the effectiveness of having an unlock schedule, because they basically doubled the supply.
But usually, when you double the supply of something, price goes down. Hardly the case for Ohm tokens, which continued to rise in price. And that's where many, including CoffeeZilla, became skeptical of what the Mantra team was doing behind the scenes, mainly selling tranches of Ohm tokens to investors over the counter with lockups months down the line, while taking those proceeds and buying more Ohm tokens on the open market. As Coffee cornered JP into admitting, you could call that stage one of what's commonly referred to as a pump and dump.
I don't feel like I or the team pumped the price.
You did, though. You sold OTC, then you re-injected it back in the chart, right? That's pumping the price.
I mean, I think we're going to have to agree to disagree, but...
Wait. No. This is not a matter of agreeing to disagree. This is just a statement of definitions, okay? Pumping is when the price meaningfully appreciates, right?
Sure.
Usually it involves somebody who's inside the token or wants the token to go up. They put in some amount of money to make the price go up. When you OTC dealing, you get some Tether or whatever you get, USDC, whatever. Yep. And then you say to your market maker, hey, I just want you to buy for the next whatever months.
Sure.
That is pumping the price. Yes or no?
Sure. Yes.
But in order for one to execute a pump and dump, one must, at some point, dump. And here's where I think JP and his investors are actually telling the truth. Sharuk, one of their investors, said they didn't dump their OHM tokens, and Laser Digital, another, said the same thing immediately after the collapse. But it does make you wonder, why pump without the dump? What exactly would be the point? That would be like attempting to hit it and quit it, but never quitting it. And I think they call that marriage. So if investors didn't sell, JP didn't sell, and the team didn't sell, how do you explain the 90% collapse? Someone definitely sold. And that's where things don't necessarily add up.
What we quickly uncovered after speaking with some of our key partners and investors in exchanges is that there had been massive liquidations on centralized exchange venues where OHM had been used as collateral for leveraged positions.
As the story goes, a trader with a large position on the crypto exchange OKX had used millions of dollars worth of OHM as collateral to back his position. At some point, OKX liquidated that position, effectively selling all the OHM tokens that trader had on the open market. OKX released a statement shortly after the collapse, noting their investigation, quote, uncovered that several on-chain addresses have been executing potentially coordinated large-scale deposits and withdrawals across various centralized exchanges since March 2025. And that's where this suddenly looks very coordinated. You might have the Mantra team doing the pumping, while someone else or a team of other people very much coordinates together to execute the dumping. But that could really only ever be achieved if OHM's token supply was extremely concentrated among just a few wallets, which surely they weren't, right?
They said the whole voting proposal was done transparently. That said, the votes are typically controlled by a small handful of voters because it's a highly concentrated token supply.
And that's the smoking gun that Ish found that others may have missed. Because in the Mantra DAO vote to launch a new blockchain with a new token, it was approved with almost unanimous support. 100 million tokens at the time, concentrated among just a few wallets with about 91 votes cast. Yes, 91. And that was certainly one red flag that set Ish's alarm bells off.
90% of the supply was held by the top 15 to 20 individual account owners on Mantra Chain, so highly concentrated supply.
And if you connect those dots, it suddenly becomes pretty clear as to how and why you could have pretty well coordinated efforts to both hit it while someone else does the quit it after price has sufficiently risen to use OHM tokens as collateral to open the largest possible position on OKX. So you might ask, who really got cucked here? And the answer to that is very obviously anyone who bought last year on the premise that Mantra's rise was because it was achieving in its mission to become the go-to blockchain for tokenizing real-world assets, when really there were some shenanigans at play. Mostly because, as transparent as token unlocks and plans may have been, we certainly didn't hear much about market maker relationships or the team buying OHM tokens until after the collapse. Do you think you and the team did enough in terms of transparency and telling people like what things could happen here?
It's a good question. I mean, I do feel like we have always tried to be as transparent as possible. I don't feel like transparency is necessarily the issue here. I do want to continue to try to be as transparent as possible and make sure that everyone can see that, again, we haven't actually sold a single token.
And this seems to be a lesson crypto learns over and over again. Since the days of Sam Bankman-Fried using FTX's own token, FTT, as collateral to get people to give him loans. And of course, that token also shares some pretty similar dynamics to the charts we opened with. And you'd have to think that eventually this ruse of Mantra being valued at more than $8 billion coming to a close might be a relief for JP, or at least I did. I've interviewed people before. I've interviewed founders in the space, Do Kwon after the Terra collapse. I've interviewed SBF after FTX went down. I've interviewed a lot of project founders. And I am curious for you, JP, in terms of whether or not there may have been some sort of kind of, I don't want to say relief, because obviously it doesn't sound like you're relieved today. But in terms of kind of token run-ups and knowing what could come, is there any sort of sigh of relief in terms of, okay, token price is down here now again? Like you said, you've been here before, you've been through collapses before. Is there any sort of like, maybe this is where we should be?
No, I don't think so. Market value aside, this is not something that I would ever feel relieved about. I mean, an unprecedented event happened. Many people lost money and got hurt. I'm hurt. I feel like our community is hurt. Our token holders are hurt. Our investors are hurt. And I feel responsible, even if I didn't do anything negligent or malicious or anything.
Now, around here, we don't use the words negligent or malicious or anything, since we just dabble in the facts and let you arrive at your own conclusions. But it is worth considering that JP is right on another piece, which is that this isn't too dissimilar from what a lot of other projects are doing right now, and may be indicative of how much further the space has to go before anyone can really say they're being transparent enough, as Ish told us.
So I feel good about being right. Can't say I feel good about everyone losing money and having another billion-dollar crypto collapse here in 2025, but we'll get there someday, hopefully.
Hopefully, indeed. I'm Zach Guzman. This was Coinage. Stay safe out there.